Hey guys, my name is xOctoManx and this is part 2 of the Subsystem tutorial in Unity 5.5. This again is a Patreon supported tutorial series, so if you want to be my patron as well, go to patreon.com/xOctoManx and check out everything on that page. So in the last one, or in the last part, we were actually creating the base of the user interface. And the game manager for the currency actually working so far. But what I didn't mention is when we're going to any other aspect ratio of 5.4, for example, or 5:4, you can see the design we were creating in 60x10 get messed up. So that's the first one we are going to fix today. So what I start with is actually the title image in here, and as you can see, its anchor point is somewhere in the center of the screen. And we want to make sure that this is going to stay in the very top of that. So what we go is, we select the Rect Transform Tool Anchor preset and hold down Alt and select the center one. So when we are going back and test this one on 5x4, as you can see, it will stay in the center. We can also test all the other ones we just currently have. We can even go into free aspect, and as you can see, it will always stay at the same position and will automatically resize. But what it's not going to do the same is the text is not staying at the top left corner, so that's what we're going and take care of next. So I'm gonna zoom again out. What we want to do is we want to keep this one in top left corner, so we could actually go and use the top left corner anchor preset. So hold down Alt once again and select this one. What you can see, it will automatically snap into the center, so we just drag this one a bit back where we want to have it, so the anchor will still stay at the same position, but all the numbers will do the same. So when we go to free aspect right now, I'm gonna go and give it a try. As you can see, the numbers will always stay at the position in the top left corner. Okay, so the next one is we want to fit the button as well. So go back to 16x10, choose the button, the close button in here, and we go in and select the top right anchor preset with holding down the Alt key, so it snaps automatically in the top right corner, but we drag this one away a bit so it again snaps to the center of the scroll bar. And when we are testing this one right now in the free aspect as well, we can see it will be automatically, we cannot see this in here, but as you can see there, it will stay at the same position, so as you always also can see in the game view itself. Okay, so what else is not changing is, or actually staying at the correct position, is the scroll bar. It's also messed up, so we're gonna press the 16x10 once again, so we have the size and everything what matters. So we are going to select the scroll bar. What we want to do and want to take care of it, that it's going to stay at the same length. So I decided to take a stretch. By holding down Alt once again, we're taking the lower stretch in the center of the screen. We could also go and take the right one. I believe the right one is pretty much okay as well. So as you can see, it fits the upper right and the bottom right corner, but we want to make sure that it is again fitting our spacer size. So we take this one, this size again here. We're gonna drag it until we hit the center of the button again, and at the lower part again, we want to make sure that it is going to snap. When you see that blue line, it will be snap on the spacer object. So I'm gonna go back to free aspect ratio, and also can see it automatically fits as well. So when we are going to do it like this, it's going to be pretty much thin, but still it will stay at that position where it has to be. So no matter what aspect ratio we are going to have, even big or small or whatever, everything will stay inside. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to make sure that we have actually a weapon shop system, and we want to prepare the weapons themselves. So it is going to be, every weapon will have its own little script where we can enter some stats, where we can enter some names and name the price, and even sprites, or even string names, and so on and so forth. We will have some trouble later on with the sprites, and we will go over, of course, and fix this one. But for now, we're just gonna do it as we would do it usually. And since we don't or we are not able to serialize sprites, we may later on have to change the sprites directly into strings. But we will go over into that later on. So what we do at first is we're gonna create a new C# script. And I just call this one weapon. If you have a working system about weapons right now, then you don't need to do that step. Just maybe enter some in your weapon itself or weapons. So, and even if you have any other items already and sub items and whatever, I don't know, then feel free to just use those and just implement what is needed. I'm gonna open up the weapon script, and we'll be back in just a second. Okay, so Mono Develop has opened. I'm gonna zoom in a bit so you can see this a bit better. What we don't need is we don't need to inherit Mono behavior, since it's just going to be a blank weapon class. Again, if you have that already, you don't need everything. But maybe you want to pass in data we actually create, which might be useful for you, or you already have that. So what does a weapon has? In our case, we don't just use weapon, or couldn't just use weapon for the shop system itself, but we can also use this in the whole game. So you need to decide how you want to implement that. I want to create some public variables, for example, the weapon name. So every weapon has a weapon name, and this is going to be of type string, of course, so we can store that. So weapon name. And also the most important one, which is actually driving, well, not the whole system, but a part of it is going to be of type int. It's going to be the weapon ID. So if you have an ID already in any kind, like an integer, for example, then you don't need to add that, as I said before. If you have, or starting new with a whole new weapon system, then you might want to enter this one for your particular weapon. So, and also we will have some sprites. Again, later on we're gonna change this one into strings. So I'm gonna leave a space in here just for me. So it's going to be of type sprite, and the first one is the unboard sprite. So it's not board, it's just a black one. You can name that again however you like. And the other one is going to be as well a sprite, but this time the board sprite. So in here we can actually later on drag in or drag over all the sprite information, like the black one and the colored one version actually, and we can change them according to if they have been bought or not. Again, we will change this later on into strings. Because sprites are not serializable. And for the shop itself, we're gonna have a weapon price. Oh, it is of course of type float. You can as well use double, int, or whatever. Float is just so we can use decimals if we like to. What else? If you later on have some stats on your weapons, then you are able to enter all the stats in here, like damage for that, or a range, or accuracy, or whatever the stats are. You can always pass those things or those informations directly into the weapon itself. Since this is just a class which holds or can hold information, you can always go in and put more info. The next one, which is a pretty much important one, is we need to make this one serializable. So we are able to serialize the whole class. So what we type in is system.serializable. If you are using the namespace system already, you don't need system dot in front. You just need to say that this one is serializable in that echo bracket. Okay, so that's what we need, or what the most important one is for our whole shop system. We need a name, we need an ID, a sprite for now, an onboard sprite, a board sprite, and the weapon price itself. So this is data. We are now actually able to fill in one kind of list. Since this is now a serializable class, we don't have problems by visualizing that inside the inspector. So what we do is we actually just create a field of type weapon or a list of type weapon, and we can pass over any weapon data we actually want and need. So don't forget to save this one, and now now we're going to go over and create just the whole weapon system itself, or actually we start with a part of it. So we create a new C# script. For me it's currently lagging a bit, so I hope it's not problematic. What we do is we just call this one weapon shop. You can rename that or name that whatever you like. You can also just name it Subsystem or whatever. So this shop or weapon shop will hold or will be just later on the shop panel. We can also pass this to any other place. It doesn't really matter where we're gonna place it, as long as it is in the scene. But since the shop panel is active, we can also make use of it and drag the shop or the weapon shop directly on shop panel, and we have the possibility to enable and disable all the components at the same time. And we could even use the start function if we need to of the weapon shop itself when we are opening the shop panel by just colliding with an NPC character, a whatever shopping cart, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I'm gonna go over and open up a weapon shop in Mono Developer, and we'll be back in a second. So now it has been opened, and what we're gonna create, as I said before, we're gonna create the first thing, which is the list of type weapon. So it's going to be a public list, so we have access to it directly in the inspector. It is of type list. So if you're using Unity 5.5, the system.collections.generic is automatically added, the namespace. If it's not inside, make sure you add this one here in the very top. Which is this one in here. So, and again, we're gonna create that list of type weapon. So, and we can, put in any name like the weapon list or the shop list or whatever. It's just it doesn't matter how you name this. I want to say it's going to be equal to new, and it's going to be, of course, a new list of type weapon. And we're gonna open close brackets and close the line with a semicolon. So when we're going to save this and check out what's happening in Unity itself, we can select the shop panel, and what will happen is in the inspector you can see we're gonna create a weapon list with a size of 0. So usually a list is nothing else than a dynamic way of showing stuff in some kind of array. If I'm gonna use a list size of 1, you can see we're gonna have, when we're opening the element 1, we're gonna have a weapon name, weapon ID, the onboard sprite, the board sprite, and the weapon price. That's the same stuff we actually created in the weapon file. If it's not serializable, you are not able to see it, so make sure you add this one at that particular point. Okay, so what we can do now is we can actually pass in names for all our weapons. I currently have 3 in my list, so I could also go in and pass over the size of 3. If you have 1000 items, I don't know, then you might want to fill in all the item data inside the list. If you have sub items, I don't know, then you might want to fiddle around with that as well. So you could even create lists and sublists and dictionaries and all the other things. So it doesn't matter how you want to handle all of that. So I prefer using just that list. Okay, so what's happening when we're passing over a weapon name in here? We're gonna, I believe my first one was a kitchen knife. I can just fill in the data into that list. So the first name is a kitchen knife. What you also notice, instead of element 0, now it's taken the name of the first string in the list. This is going to be the weapon ID 1. Do not use 0. 0 is for something later on, so we can actually test against if there is a weapon ID or not. And a weapon price of maybe, I don't know, 400.50. So 400 or 400.5. So this is the first price for our first weapon, but still we have the data in the list. We could also go in and place in the onboard sprite and the board sprites. So what you want to do is at the very first, before you're actually handling around all that sprite stuff, is go and create a resources folder. Make sure you write it correct. And in this resources folder, create a sprites folder. So the resources folder is actually the folder where we are able to, let's say, pass over data and load out data at in runtime. So everything in resources can be loaded in runtime, and so we can change later on the sprites in runtime by just loading them directly from the resources folder. Make sure you have that when we go and come to the particular place or whatever, then we need that information directly in the resources folder. I will go over that anyways later on once again. Also, do not create a texture atlas like this one. It's looking cool and it's working pretty nicely, but make sure you export everything directly from that weapons atlas actually, and make everything its own graphic like those here. So a black one, a colored one, and same for the knives, a black one and a colored one. And rename them to whatever you please. I renamed mine with a underscore inside. The names later on are important. And the black one, I just say underscore black. So make sure they are all sprites and they are single sprites, and they are also matching each other when we are switching all over them. So make sure the size is the same and so on and so forth, and even the quality and stuff. Okay, with that out of the way, we can go back to the shop panel and actually drag in informations or sprites we want to have inside. So the first one, since it's our chef or kitchen knife, I can take them directly from the list in here. So I have the chef knife, which is the board sprite, is the colored version, and the chef knife black is onboard sprite. So what we now can do is we can create another list of that particular item holders when we're starting the game or actually starting the weapon shop, and we fill in the data we currently have in the weapon list. So for example, that particular sprite needs to be on board except it is already board, and so on and so forth. So it's a bit back and forth handling, and also fill in the name in the right spot, fill in the price in the right spot, and do all of that stuff. And that's what we're going and do next. So, but before we do that, we actually want to make sure that weapon shop is some kind of a static again, as we already did with the game manager beforehand, so we can actually later on directly access it from outside without any fiddling around, finding the game object and all the other things. We don't need that. So what we do is we say public static weapon shop. So we're gonna type it as it is over here, or just go in and copy paste the name of the class. It does not like to give me that. Oh, there we go. And we need an instance name, and this is just the small lettered weapon shop, as we again had done in the game manager itself. So what we do is with the weapon shop, again in the start, we make sure that weapon shop with small letters is going to be equal to this. So then we make sure this is the only one, or actually we're gonna have directly access. Since that is a static one, we need to make sure that we add a singleton parent, as I already explained in the game manager part, or we just say this is the one because it's actually just the only one, otherwise static won't work in this case. So make sure this is added as well in the start. So I don't need update for now, so I'm gonna create my own function, and I call this one just fill list. So what are we going to fill in that list is basically all the items according to whatever is in the weapon list. Yeah, and that's what we're going to do next. So when we want to fill that list, what we're gonna do is we're gonna instantiate one of our item holder game objects and actually fill the data directly into that instantiated items or item holders. So what we need is we need something which can hold the data, or actually has access to the data without going and looking at all that stuff actually. So what we're gonna do while we are in here, we're gonna create a new C# script first. And let me just name this one item holders. You can name that whatever you like again. And open this one up in MonoDevelop as well. So item holder basically is nothing else than just holding connections to everything what is inside item holder. So usually, or basically nothing else than what we have in the weapon itself. So what we need is the access to the components directly on item holder itself. So what do we have is gonna show you. This one is, at first we have a name which is of type text field or text. The same for the price, it's also text. Then we have a button in here and a button name. We have the sprite, and if you later on have stats and all the other things, so you will need all of that stuff as well. So open up item holder once again. What I need is the connection to text elements and all the other graphical stuff inside. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add the namespace Unity engine.UI so we can have access to access elements directly. So, and in this case it's going to be a public text. And this is going to be the, you can name it item name, you can also name it weapon name, or whatever you please and like. I'm gonna name this one item name just in case, so we don't confuse ourselves. So, because this is basically the same stuff which is on item holder itself. So the next is another text element, which is the item price. Then we have the graphic or an image. So I'm not sure if we're using a sprite or an image in this case, so we might need to go in and change this one later on. For now I'm gonna take just image, and this is our sprite or item sprite. I believe we need to change that into a sprite. Let's just do it as a sprite first. Maybe later on we're gonna have to change that into image. I don't know yet. So yeah, maybe that's easier to access. And the last one is the button itself, which is basically nothing else just than a game object. So it's just a game object, and we call this one item or buy button, for example. So later on we also have stuff directly on the buy button, but for now we don't. Actually, we could also manipulate the text directly on the buy button, but for now let's just keep it as it is, so we have all the connections for now inside item holder. So what we do is we're gonna open up our shop panel once again if it's not opened yet, and go to our spacer, to our grid, and inside grid we have our item holder. And what we do is we're gonna add the item holder script directly onto that one, so we can see, okay, there's something new, it's bold, so we need to apply the changes later on. What we also want to do is we're gonna take the item image and drag this one into item sprite, but as you can see it's not accessible, so we need to make this one an image. Gonna save. So maybe gonna rename this to item image just in case, directly in item holder once again, so it will change in a second in here as well. So now it's of type image, so we take the image and drag this one directly in that particular slot. Same for the buy button, which is of type game object. Then we have the item name text, so the item name text goes here, and the item price text goes into item price, of course. don't forget to apply the changes. So what we now have is we can instantiate item holder. It will hold all the informations in the item holder script we're going to pass over in just a second. And after that, we can read the data or actually manipulate the data directly in the item holder, which we are going to instantiate at that particular position or time or whatever. So with that said, we'll make sure everything is saved and so on. We're gonna go back to our weapon shop itself, and what we do is we want to have a public type of game object, which is for our item holder prefab. So I'm gonna name this one item holder prefab, as we already created an item holder prefab. And what we're gonna do with that is, when we are in our shop panel, we can see there's an item holder prefab directly under this one. We can also drag this one in the top. It doesn't really matter. So we go to a prefab folder and take our item holder and drag this one inside. So now we have the possibility to actually create 100,000 prefabs directly from item holder and can pass over data. And how we can do that is basically we just loop through our list of weapons, or actually the weapon list, and see how many items inside. And for every item we're gonna find, or actually Unity finds, it will instantiate an item holder prefab and place this directly into grid, into this one. So to place this one into grid, we're gonna better take another public one, a public type transform, with a big T of type transform, and we're gonna call this one just grid. So this is our the connection to the grid itself, so we are able to actually pass over all the data directly into grid. So what we do is, again, we go to shop panel, to scroll down, you can see grid right now, and we drag in our grid as a transform. So since shop panel is not an prefab, we don't need to change anything at that point. Maybe later on we're gonna do so, but for now we don't need to. So what we now can do is we go and iterate through all the items in weapon list. We have two possibilities. We can use a for each loop, or we can use just a normal for loop. It doesn't really matter, I guess. But maybe the easiest one is using, well, it doesn't really matter, I believe. Except some handling with for each can be troublesome, so we might go in and use a for loop. So, as you may remember how for loops are working, we are looping through we say we want to have a kind of variable in the top or in the left. It's of type int. It's going to be I, which is basically nothing else than just the name of that particular integer. And we set this one to 0. And when the next statement actually is, while I is smaller than weapon list dot count, so the length of the complete weapon list, we want to make sure that we increment I, so we type in I++. So while we are going through that, we can do everything we need. For example, for every loop we are going through that list, while it is still smaller than that, we're gonna instantiate an item holder prefab and places one places one as a children of the transform grid. So that's what we're going to do first. So what we do is we say instantiate the specific game object. In this case, it's going to be the item holder prefab, and where we want to transform this one. As you can see, there's a new operation, transform parent. This is, I believe, new in Unity 5.5, maybe 5.4 already. I skipped 5.4, so I don't really know. But if you are in 5.3 or older, you need to set the parent later on by hand, or actually in the end of the script, by using the name of the instantiated object dot set parent and then in brackets we're gonna tell the transform grid. Maybe it's still inside, so I'm gonna show you this one in just a second as well. Okay, so we want to, let's assume we want just instantiate that prefab just for now. So what we need is we need a connection to it. So we say we want to have it stored somewhere as a game object, and we just call this one maybe holder. So this is again what we are instantiating. This is the name, and we say equal, and then is the operation. So we operate and instantiate an item holder prefab. It just will stay or will be instantiated depending on how many items we have in the weapon list. So for each loop through that for loop, this will be instantiated. Again, in all the versions, what we would need to say is holder dot set parent. But as you can see, set parent, or actually it's transform dot set parent. There we go. So this is the old version. What you're gonna do in 5.3 or under, you would need to set the parent transform parent. In this case, it's gonna be or would be the parent grid, like that. So, but since I am in Unity 5.5, I cannot, or I don't need to do that at the very end of the script, but you need to if you have to, or actually, yeah, if you are in any older version. Since we are, or I am in 5.5, I can say just comma grid. So I save a complete line of code, and that's pretty much everything we're gonna need in this here. So when I save this one and press play, I should have 3 instantiated, including this one, 3 instantiated item holders once it's compiling, and so on and so forth, and it should be inside of grid. We are not able to do that because we are not filling the list. So I'm gonna save, copy the name of that, and I want to make sure that I do fill list when I'm at start. So otherwise it's not going to get accessed. So gonna compile this one back once again, press play, and now we should have 4 items in the list. The first one, which is the first we just had. And as you can see, 1, 2, 3 clones of it, and you are able to scroll around already. So that's pretty much cool. And now we need to pass over the data to the item holders script, which is directly sitting on that item holder. So what we do is we're gonna get the component and of course store that at the same time, and then we are able to pass over the data. So the very first one is we're gonna take a name, or actually at first it's going to be the type of item holder. We're gonna call this one maybe holder script or component or whatever. And what we're gonna do is we say holder dot get component, and the component of course is going to be of type item holder. So now we have access to everything what is an item holder. As you can see, we now have access to item name, item price, which are the text components in here. So we can actually fill the data with true data directly on that item. So that's the first one we are going to do. We say holder dot, and now we have everything inside. Any text components maybe, let's see, what was it, item name. So we say holder dot item name. Oh, it's holder script, I'm sorry. Holder script dot item name is going to be equal to, and now we're going to read the data directly from the weapon list. So it's going to be weapon list in square brackets I, that's the item we are currently in. And now we have the board sprite, the weapon ID, and the weapon name. And there we go. And we need to make sure that we end the line, but item name is of type text. As you see when you're going over with a mouse, we need to make sure we enter that dot text in the very end. Okay, so the next one is holder script dot item price dot text is going to be equal to weapon list and square brackets I, again the item we are currently in, and we're gonna take the weapon price like that. Also, as you can see, we are not currently not using the item ID, so maybe we want to pass over the item ID as well into item holder, but I'm not 100% sure if we need to, but we better go and do so. So it's just a public string, and this is the item ID or weapon ID, ID, like that. No, it's not a string. It's going to be of type int, of course, and no typos. So item ID. So we're gonna pass over that data as well. So later on, we are able to read the data directly from it if we need to. So holder script dot item ID is going to be equal to whatever the weapon ID is in the weapon list. So weapon list in square brackets I dot weapon ID. Okay, so the next one is that we want to change, of course, the the item image, or actually the sprite on that image. So what we can say is we want to make a difference between what is currently the state of is that particular item already bought or not. And so if this particular weapon has been bought already, then we want to give it the bought sprite, and if it's not, then we want to give it an unbought sprite. Don't forget to save the changes just for now, and then we're gonna go and change the weapon just a bit as well. So what we do is in the weapon class itself, we're just gonna add one more state actually, or one more variable, and this is of type bool, so it will be just true or false, and I just call this one bought. So if this is returning a true, then the sprite will be different, and if it's returning false, then, or actually is set to be false, then this board will be, the sprite will be the unbought sprite. So it's not bought or bought, depending on that. So again, we go over, change the sprites later on anyways, to strings, but for now, we're gonna keep it as it is. So in Weapon Shop, we just, actually, again, ask if the weapon list in square brackets I dot bought is going to be equal to be true, for example. Then what we want to do is we want to say that holder script dot the weapon the item image dot sprite is going to be equal to, and now once again the weapon list in square brackets I dot bought sprite. Again, we're gonna do and change this one later on anyways. Okay, so for this, if it's true, then we're gonna return this one. And else if, I'm not sure if we need to have else if in this case, but we could also say we just don't do that, because this will return true or false in any way, because we're gonna request that. I just say else, and what I do is I copy this line in here and change the last one to be the unbought sprite. So I'm gonna save that, go back to Unity, and I go to my shop panel. I want to make sure that I have different sprites inside. So for this one, it's going to be the unbought sprite of the army knife, so it will be black. And in here we have the bought sprite of the army knife, and in the last one I can also fill in the name army knife, and this is going to be katana, and I can just pass over a black version and here for the unbought, and a normal one in here. I have one typo here. Oh, and the weapon price needs to be converted to a string, it seems. So we're gonna do that pretty quick. Don't forget to change or save the changes. That's what this is complaining about. We are not able to show a float in a float inside a string, so we need to convert it to one. Okay, so now we have filled the data inside. We're gonna change the weapon IDs to 1, 2, 3, so there's a difference as well. And we can check some of that once in here by hand, but later on the system will do this on its own. Okay, so let me get rid of this one. I just disable the item holder 1, so it will be filled automatically with what is in this shop. And what you can see now is this is worth 405. We need some $sign as well in here, I believe. And we have also a 010 here. The knife names are inside. Pretty cool so far. So we need to after we have converted the item price into that string, we're gonna go in and type in, I believe it was N2 for the top one, and in the front in here, let me make it a bit bigger, and in the front here we can just say we want to have a $sign and a space in between, and after that we're gonna add a plus. So this is just the basic of the string. Then we have a space, and then this item price is coming, and it gets automatically formatted by N2 as we already have done in the game manager at the very bottom, as you can see over here. Okay, so let's get back and check everything out. We might go in and fill in some more data for the shop panel, so you can see. Let's say this one has a price of $9.99 or whatever, 99, and this one here maybe at 10,000. Yeah, something like that. So when we're pressing play now, you can see it automatically fills in the data in the corresponding spots. We have the money values in here, we have the names in here. You can always fiddle around with the text size and all the other things. And of course it loads the correct black data. But let's say we already bought the army knife, for example, and set this one to board. We want to make sure that it's also automatically loading that particular image. So if all of that 3 items usually would be board or not, then we would have everything in as colored weapons or everything as black ones. So we currently start with no weapons, so everything will be black. Again, we will change that that stuff a bit later on, since we are not able to save that particular data from the sprites in here. So we're gonna change the system a bit later on. Okay. So that's it for that part. I believe we go over next time by filling the buy button stuff inside, and then we're pretty close to complete this one. Thanks for watching the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thumb this video up if you like it, and feel free to become my patron or donate by using PayPal to support me and my channel in the future. All links will be below in the description. See you in the next tutorial. Bye bye.